Hello, everyone. This is Jim Rizoli here, and this is kind of a switch. I'm actually interviewing Andrew today, and I'm going to be talking to him about his book that he published, The Synagogue of Satan. And Andrew, first of all, welcome to your own show.
Thank you, Jim. It's great having you as a guest host on the show. I just thought it would be a nice way of doing it. I've only had a couple of guest hosts before, and that's Rick Adams of RBN and Dave Gahari of American Free Press. So I'm really pleased that you've agreed to interview me. And, of course, you'll be putting up this show on your regular channels.
Right. So we'll be doing something with it, and obviously you can do whatever you want to. So that's great. What I wanted to talk about today is a lot of things in your book that I've been going through your book, and there's a lot of things in the book. My brother and I, because he actually got the book some time ago, and we discuss all these things during the day. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just gonna let you basically though talk about things. I'll ask you questions to try to stimulate, what's in the book, so we can go from there. So, but just for me to make a couple comments about your book, I think your book is probably one of the best books out there because it's very simple to read. It's not there's some books I read that are very very difficult to read, and yours is just written for the plain person. It has the information there, and it tells it like it is, and I really appreciate that. And the information in it, what I like about it is it's biblically based, okay? And that's, I think, is very important because a lot of people today, and a lot of the movements here, don't care about that side of the issue. So I think that's important too. Now, what I want to know from you, basically some background information, because this isn't a type of book you just kind of get an epiphany and all of a sudden, oh, I think I'm going to write a book like this. There has to be something in your life and in your past here that stimulated you to actually write the book. So maybe, first of all, give us some background information about you, where you live, and what you're doing and how you came into all of this. So if you could.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Basically, I started following this sort of alternative movement. Never really know what to call it, but I call it the truth movement, really, back in the late 1990s. And then I got the internet, and I used to use it at work and be looking up things on this subject. And I just thought at the start it was just, a few elites controlling things, essentially. I never really saw the Jewish connection. And then I decided to do my own website. And I was going to do an article on the Bilderbergers, article on Council on Foreign Relations, an article on the Royal Institute of International Affairs, and then an article on the Rothschilds, and just decided to start off with the Rothschilds. And I just saw them and the Jewish connection to literally every nefarious activity that one could think of, the wars, the control of the banking, the media. And it's got absolutely out of control of late. And I don't want to go off topic, but I think that this is very well worth mentioning because we started recording this show at 2:00 in the afternoon, my time, which I believe is 9:00 in the morning, your time. And 26 minutes before we started recording this show, I received an email from my print on-demand publisher called Lulu.com. It says, questionable content. Dear Mr. Hitchcock, this note serves as notification that your content has been reported to be in violation of the Lulu membership agreement. We have conducted a content and account review subsequent to the notification. As Lulu has sole discretion in determining the appropriateness of content sold on our site and in consideration of previous account infractions specific to its content, we will be terminating your Lulu account. Accordingly, we will remove your content from availability. As per the Lulu membership agreement, we strongly recommend that you do not rely upon Lulu as a storage site for your content. However, we will be making an exception and allow time for you to retrieve your files. The content and associated Lulu account will be terminated by Tuesday, September the 5th. For more information on the terms and conditions of publishing through lulu.com, please review our membership agreement at lulu.com. And then you've got the address. Regards, questionable content team, lulu.com. Now, Jim, this book came out, and it's not just this one. They've taken down the Synagogue of Satan Updated, Expanded and Uncensored. That was the one that was banned by Amazon earlier in the year, along with other books like M.S. King's The Bad War and Tex Mars's Holy Serpent of the Jews, etc. They've also banned In the Name of Yahweh. So essentially, at the moment, I have no books in print myself. The only book in print is the Tex Mars version of the Synagogue of Satan, which I believe you can still get on Amazon.com. But that is a 60,000 word book published in 2007. And my updated, expanded, and uncensored version is 144,000 words published in January 2012. So it's literally sold tens and tens of thousands on Lulu and on Amazon, and now it is no more. So I'm going to be looking for another publisher. I've got some ideas already to bring the book out, but as of now, the only way you can get this book is to buy a signed copy from me on my website, andrewcarringtonhitchcock.com. You go to the menu bar, sign books, and you can get it there. But that's all, I'm afraid, at the moment.
Wow. Now, your book is print on demand, right?
Yes, it is. But what Amazon used to do is Amazon used to, because it was so popular, they used to keep it in stock. And they'd always make an order of, I think it was sort of about 80 copies a month that they would order. And they'd go to various places. You get the most of those would be ordered by Amazon.com, obviously in America, but then the .co.uk site would order some, the German site would order some, etc., etc. And then you had all the Lulu direct sales where people had gone to them. So yeah, it's a print-on-demand book, but it was still regarded as enough of a good seller that Amazon would keep it in stock.
Wow. Well, sadly, I think this is the direction that everything is going. I mean, there's really not much we can do about it. I mean, think about it. They stop people from the Visas and MasterCards. If you have that and use that service, that now you can't use those services to get the money for your books or whatever things you have, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just what Jews do all the time. I mean, we see in the early 1930s the Jews demanding you boycott German goods. They've always been so good at economic boycotts and what have you. And it just goes to show their fingerprints all over everything. But the funny thing is that they never like to take you to court, because there's obviously the content is something that they don't feel happy disputing. So rather than do that, they'll shut you up economically. And the way that it just goes to show how out of control they are now. They think we own everything, so we're just going to shut up the dissenters and we'll just prevent them from making any sort of living on their work. We'll ban it all, but we will ban it, but we won't ban it. We can't go to the government. We can't take a court case out, because, the fact is that we print money out of nothing. So if you go and get a mortgage somewhere for $1 million, then the bank will loan you the $1 million and they will just print a credit of $1 million in their account. So they create that $1 million out of nothing. Then you pay them interest on that money that they've created out of nothing, and if you default on any payments or you can't fulfill the mortgage, they will come after you and they will take your property, and then they'll still come after you for the money that you owe them, the balance of between the property and what you owe them after they've auctioned it off. And so it's a giant scam that if people were aware of it, the whole world would be turned on its head tomorrow, and all these elites would be finished. We wouldn't have these Jews in our countries, because people would be aware of how not just themselves, but their generations and generations of ancestors have been ripped off by this scam. And this is why these people get to own everything, because if you can print money out of nothing, it's like being the banker in Monopoly. You know, eventually, if you're the banker and you own all the money, then you can buy up everything on the board.
Right. Now, I noticed in the back, and I was looking at the back cover of your book, that you have a financial background.
Yes, it was more in nothing to do with banking, and it was insurance underwriting, really. I used to do, it wasn't anything particularly technical. For example, if you work in a company, I did what was known as group life insurance or group permanent health insurance, and what that entailed was certainly in the UK, you work in a company, and generally one of your benefits will be that if you die whilst you're in service, then your relatives, whoever you nominate, wife, children, what have you, will get 4 times your income paid to them as a compensation. So it's like basically a form of life insurance, but what you do is you insure all the employees of a company, and then you rate them as to, obviously, if you've got someone sitting in an office, then they're going to be less at risk than someone, working, cleaning the windows of a tower block,
Right.
And so you would rate the different lives accordingly. And then also you'd rate them by geographical location. So you have higher mortality rates in certain parts of the country than others. And for example, when I was doing it, you would load somebody in Glasgow, Scotland by 30%, but someone in Surrey, at the south of England, you would discount them by 20%. And you just put all these figures through, and in the end you come up with a quote, and you'd send that to the company, and they'd take the business or not. So that was really the sort of insurance that my financial involvement. I also worked for as a temp, and this was just a temporary thing. I wasn't actually employed by them. I was employed by an agency on for Barclays, of all places, and I did that for just under a year. It was basically in the early 2000s. Microsoft were getting wind of the fact that all these companies were buying some of their software, and then it wasn't that they were trying to rip them off, but they didn't have procedures in place. So as soon as they got a new employee, they just put the software on the new employee's machine. But the company, by law, had to have a license for every machine they were running their software on. So they started going to all these big organizations, Barclays was one of them, looking up the amount of employees they had and the amount of licenses they had. And if there was a discrepancy, they'd say, look, we're going to take you to court if you don't audit what you've got and pay us what you owe. So Barclays, being a big worldwide organization, we had to map how many people around the world were using the software, and it turned out a lot of the employees were still using Lotus software back then in the branches. So that was another bit of involvement. But it's, as I say, it's not, when it says financial industry, it wasn't like I was a banker or anything like that. I was really just a technical guy, low level, really.
Sure. Do you work now? Do you have a job now, or?
Well, no. I mean, my job is doing this radio show, right. And I write the occasional articles. I do a lot of work producing and what have you here. And there's a lot more, as you know, from doing your own show. Some people think that, if you put 5 hours of shows out a week, then you only work 5 hours a week. But right. That's the easy part. The hard part is deciding the content, getting the guests, dealing with all the admin that goes with it. There's so many other things, of course, with selling the books that were available but aren't now. And then you get a lot of emails you have to deal with people and things like that. And I also work for the Barnes Review and the American Free Press. I do shows for them, and I get paid for that. So essentially, this has been my full-time role since February of 2016, when I got a severance package from the last firm I worked in. And I just thought I'd give this a go. I thought I'd give it about a year and see if I could, make a living doing this. And it's on donations as well. That's, another area I make an income from. And I wouldn't have had the courage to just go and quit a job and then just do a show and, take a chance, as it were, Jim. But when I was working in a company and they had an office up in the north of England and an office in the south where I was working, and they said, right, we're losing money, so we're going to close the office in the south of England, and all the people in that office, you're going to be compensated for losing your job through no fault of your own. We call it redundancy in the UK. I'm not sure what you call it in America, but by law they have to pay you a certain amount of money for each year that you work there. It's not a great deal. I think I left with about $4,000 because I'd only been there for about 3-4 years. But that kind of forced my hand. I was like, well, I could go and get another job, or I could try doing this for a while. And I tried doing this, and it's proved to be really successful. And it's I think that this is another reason why I've been being targeted. And obviously it's not me alone. I said earlier in the program about other people who'd had their books taken down by Amazon. So, and there was hundreds taken down. So mine was just amongst that.
Right.
But generally they were going after Holocaust books. But as you can see now, In the Name of Yahweh is a book on the Bible. Yeah. Okay. And I'd say 60% of it, probably more, is actual quotes from the Bible. And then the rest is my commentary. So they're now censoring the Bible.
Well, I think, I was just thinking about this the other day. I'm saying there has to be at some point in time them banning the Bible. I mean, there has to be. When you think about how Jesus dealt with the Jews and what he said about them, some people are going to make some sort of complaint and say, we can't have this book in this, not in schools, but, in libraries or wherever, right?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure if it's in my book. I'll just look it up while I speak to you about it. But Abraham Foxman, certainly, he actually called to have the New Testament banned. That was, that's a bit on Mark Rich. He was involved there as well. So, but if people look it up online and say Abe Foxman calls for the New Testament to... Oh, here we are. It is in my book, page 355 of the updated version that has just been banned. The National Director of the ADL, Abraham H. Foxman, publishes a book entitled Never Again, The Threat of the New Anti-Semitism, and this is in year 2004. The Threat of the New Anti-Semitism is his book, in which he states that the New Testament's lie that the ancient Pharisees were responsible for the death of Christ has been responsible for anti-Semitism throughout the millennia, and thus the New Testament of the Bible is hate speech and should be censored or preferably banned.
Wow. That's unbelievable. Wow. Well, I tell you, it's really getting very interesting out there. I'm just noticing it and watching it. It's like a crescendo. It's just building up and building up, and these people are just rabid, evil people. What I want to ask you, talk to you right now, because like I said, your book is so good because the things you said about the Jews, I basically felt anyway, even if I never read your book. In other words, if I wrote the book, I'd be saying the same things you would. And I wanted to talk to you because we interviewed David Duke the other day, and he had a different take on the Jews. And his let me set you up for it, okay? You know all the talk about the Khazars and the Jews and in Europe, and how they went from Israel to Europe, and they supposedly got a life there and developed there in that area. Now, David was talking about, he was saying that he felt that all the Jews are related with their DNA. Now, can you talk about that a little bit? How you feel about that?
I think one thing with David Duke, it's my belief that he doesn't believe that the white race are the Israelites of the Bible. He believes that the Jews are. So I just want to throw that bit in at the start, because I firmly believe, as Christ said, that the Jews are the children of Satan, so they would be descended through Cain after he was born via Satan's seduction of Eve in the garden. But But it's a good point, because at the very start of my book, one of the first things that I mention is the conversion to Judaism of the people of Khazaria under the King Bulan in 740 AD. And essentially in Khazaria, which was a large area in sort of Central Europe. Right in the middle of it would be the country of Georgia. So you're going towards Russia, that sort of way, but it also went to the west as well. So it was to the east and west of Georgia. So Georgia, the country, is slap bang in the middle, basically. So that's really where you want to look at. And he had Muslims on one side of him attacking him, and Christians on the other side attacking him. And his people were an idolatrous people. They basically did not worship any god. They were all into pagan sort of stuff. And he thought, well, in order to get protection of one side or the other, I've got to convert to one side or the other. But then he realised that if he converted to Islam, then he'd be attacked by the Christians. And if he converted to Christianity, he'd still be attacked by the Muslims. So he had this ingenious idea when he noticed that Jews could travel into Muslim countries and Christian countries and still be able to trade and what have you and have no problem whatsoever. So I thought, that's the solution. So he converted all his people on pain of death. You know, if you chose not to convert, you would be killed. It was it was an absolute edict that was pronounced there. And that they had to all convert to Judaism. But when you look also at that area geographically, and you look at the fact that they were an idolatrous, mongrelized people anyway, I think it's sufficient to say that there was already a great deal of Jewish DNA in their blood because of the nature of the people that they were. They would mix with absolutely anybody. So I think that was already present. But then as well, it says in the Bible that the people that do the bidding of the Jews are twice the child of hell as the Jew themselves. And so, if you choose to become a Jew, as it were, I think that's sufficient in God's eyes that you are. And of course, as I say, I believe that there was probably that DNA in there anyway as the nature of their lifestyle. But either way, they've chosen to become that. And if you actually choose to become part of a people that Jesus Christ said were the children of Satan, then I think that's even worse than being born one yourself, because if you're born one, you were just born one. But if you actually choose to become one, that's a choice that you make.
Right. Because I'm reading here in the book on page 12, it says about studies being made over the past decade, and it's scientifically established that a vast majority of people alive today who say they are Jews have little or no DNA relationship to the ancient bloodline of the Israelites. So you stand by that, right?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, the Israelites for me now are the white race today, and the Jews. The history is that we go back to the Garden of Eden. You've got Adam and Eve there. And people think Eve ate an apple in the garden. No, what happened was she was seduced. That Eve eating an apple is nowhere in the scripture. You will see the serpent beguiled me and I did eat. And then you have to look into various, your Bible dictionaries and what have you, your Hebrew dictionaries, etc. And what she actually said is the serpent beguiled, seduced me, and I did lay with him. And that was when she conceived Cain. And she falsely believed that God had given her Cain when it was actually Satan. And then along comes Abel after that, because as soon as she'd been seduced by Satan, she goes over to Adam and says, this was quite an interesting thing I've just learned. So she lays with Adam and then conceives Abel. And of course, we know that Cain killed Abel, and God even said to him that what is this that you have done? You've got sin in your blood, basically. If you look through the book of Genesis, he makes it quite clear when he doesn't accept his offering, and he can't accept him because he knows who he is. And then Cain gets banished from the garden and he goes eastward, okay? And then he goes eastward and he has lots of descendants and build cities, etc. And so, by definition, that means that there must have been people on the planet before Adam and Eve, for Cain to find someone to procreate with and produce children. So that's my perspective on it. And there's so many other. That was what In the Name of Yahweh was all about. What In the Name of Yahweh essentially was all about was improving a few things. Firstly, who the white race are historically, then who the Jews are historically, then the laws that the white race are supposed to follow as they're laid out in the Bible, in the Old Testament, and then prophecies of what's going to happen in the future from the books such as Revelation, etc. And the book of Revelation right now, Jim, tells us that in these end times, or really at the end of an evil age, they call it, there's going to be water as a flood that's going to overcome the Israelites. And this water is nations and peoples and tongues. Well, that's other races. Now, the only countries I'm aware of that's getting an influx of other races are white countries, or originally white countries that the Jews have been mongrelizing over a period of time through their changing of the immigration laws. So in 1965, when you had the Hart-Celler Act that favoured third world immigration over white immigration, in that same year you had the Race Relations Act in the UK with the same purpose. You had another act in 1965, same year in Australia, and I found that when I was speaking to Paul Fromm recently, in 1965 as well in Canada. So right back to 1965, they decided, right, we're going to impose all these different acts on each of these countries so we can basically breed the white people out of existence, and then we'll also favour the third world immigrants over them by, ridiculous so-called hate speech laws and things like that. And we can see that any dissent that we're having now, I mean, you're no stranger to being banned off public access television in all sorts of ways that they've come after you long before they came after me. So it's just an ongoing process. They're going to try and shut everything down that they can because they know the cat's out of the bag, but they're just hoping the cat has not got too far out of the bag, in my opinion.
Right. You do a really great job in tracing the Jews in certain individuals anyway, high-ranking Jews who pretty much ruined the whole world here. And you give dates too, you show all these people, when they were around, what they did. The Rothschilds, obviously, the biggest, group of people. When you think about the Rothschilds, how do you feel about this? Because it seems like the Rothschilds came into play the 1700s, thereabouts. Who was before them? Do you have an idea?
Well, it's interesting because, of course, it's in 1694, I believe. 1694. I was right. The Bank of England is founded, and of course, the first Rothschild didn't come along until 1744, when he was born on February the 22nd as Mayer Amschel Bauer in Frankfurt, Germany. Okay. But essentially, we know that going back to 1694, what had happened is that the government of King William III, who come in from Holland with the Jews, had allowed them to set up this bank. So, of course, we've got different Jews there then. Where they started making their money was they were getting involved with royalty over in Holland and where have you. And then, of course, they were making money on that side of things, but the real killing came with Nathan Mayer Rothschild, the one of the 5 sons that was sent to England to set up a Rothschild banking house there, when with the war between Wellington and Napoleon, and he made out that Napoleon had won, so all the stocks, etc., went became worth nothing on the stock exchange, and so he bought them. He started selling his stocks, looking mournfully, standing on the floor of the stock exchange. And then when everyone panicked and started selling theirs for next to nothing, he instructed his agents to start buying them back slowly, and he then got control of the Bank of England that way as well. And so it was a complete act of deceit. And there was, funny enough, a court case in America some 100 years later, and a Rothschild descendant sued to say that this story was false, and the judge said no, it wasn't, and he had to pay the court costs.
Oh, no kidding. Well, I notice, and of course, most people that study the topic here about the Jews, the quote that Mayor Rothschild says, "Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes the laws." So there you go. I mean, once he got into banking, once this family got into the banking and the wars and the governments, that's where the real money was, apparently.
Yes, exactly. Because a lot of people don't know about wars is that the bankers lend money to both sides, and the rule is that whoever is the victor has to honour the debts of the vanquished. Okay, and so either way, the bankers win. And when you had situations with, I think it was in the Second World War, it was Max Warburg in Germany and Paul Warburg in America, and Paul Warburg was financing the American war effort, and Max Warburg was involved in the financing of the German war effort.
Right.
So they're brothers. Okay,
sure.
And that's what they're doing. And we saw with the Rothschilds around Europe, with all the wars that were going on then. You had the French house, you had the Austrian house, you had the German house, you had the English house. All these things coming together, and they're all financing their particular nations, and then obviously financing other people overseas as well. So wars are a Jewish harvest, according to Rabbi Rabinovich, I believe. And that's because they make the money off the bloodshed.
Right. Well, I know in the United States, the Revolutionary War, again, the same situation going on there. And the banks always want to burn the candle from both ends, right?
They do. And, of course, as we saw recently, Jim, when they've burnt it from both ends and it's got too close to the centre, then they just get the governments to bail them out through the money of the taxpayer. And again, as I said earlier in the show, we're bailing them out with money that they create out of nothing. Right. The whole thing is just amazing. And it goes to show the power they have, because this was a worldwide problem back in 2008. And back then they were able to get all these governments to bail them out. And it's like, no, what you should have done is you should have let them all fail. People who had money with them, well, that's unfortunate. But people who had, say, a house and they owed, owed half the value still on a mortgage, well, that's now their house because the bank's out of business. But I'll tell you how it works. When a bank does go into liquidation, and the Depression in America is an idea of this, and I learnt this off Stephen Goodson, who was a former director of South African Bank, I think the South African Reserve Bank. And another bank will come along and they'll buy that bank for a penny, okay, or $1 or what have you. But they'll only buy the money that bank is still owed. But the money that bank had from creditors, like if you had $1,000 in it, well, that's gone. But the bank that buys it will still be able to go to all the people that owe the money and say, look, we've taken over the debt that you owe, and so you're now paying us. But they don't have to go to any of the people who have money in the bank and said, oh, we've restored your money. So they've got all angles in their favour.
Right. Boy, again, as I go, through your book here, you show almost by year how the Jews just took control of everything. I mean, if people only knew what was going on behind the scenes, they'd go crazy. They'd just go nutty here, but they don't care. I guess most people don't care about these type of things. When you get into the times we're living in now, what do you see happening? I mean, I pretty much have an idea, but what do you see happening that really us whites, okay, the leftovers here, have to be worried about? What do you see happening now?
Well, what I see is that our only salvation is going to be divine intervention. I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but from my perspective in the UK, if I was to go out and just run for political office in my area, and I just wanted to run the platform of restoring scriptural laws and having a whites only area, I wouldn't even make it to the campaign. I'd be arrested for making a racist statement. Or if I wanted to say that homosexuality is defined in the book of Leviticus as an abomination and the penalty for it is death, it would be, that's hate crime. You said hate speech. So basically what they're saying is things in the Bible, laws of the Bible, are hate, but what they've come up with in the last few years is good. And we know as well from Scripture that in these end times, everything it's stated, everything considered good will be bad, and everything considered bad will be good. Okay? And so we can see the absolute reversal, and that's how these people have got control. And they think, because they own everything, that they can do what they want. And of course, they're proving time and time again that they can, because they come after people, they shut them down, and they know everyone's got to live, everyone's got to eat. And so if you can just turn around and stop them getting an income, but you see, they don't just stop at that. They'll then, if you have to stop doing what you're doing and then you go and get a job somewhere, they'll find out where you work and they'll say, this guy wrote this.
Right.
Or this guy said this. So that then so they just want basically you to die.
Yeah,
and they'll quite happily starve you to death.
I know, of course, I think it's the book of Revelation. It talks about those not having the mark of the wild beast are not going to be able to sell, buy and sell, right? I mean, that's what it talks about.
And I think that mark could well be those, we hear it's a mark can be placed in the hand or the forehead or what have you. What's in your forehead? Your brain. Right. The mark could be the fact that if you're not corrupted by this system, then you're not going to be able to trade. Yeah. And we know that all these people that go to work and they come home, and it amazes me the amount of white people, which is 99.9% of them, because I don't think we even represent 0.1%, Jim, of people that have woken up. And I mean woken up properly, not people that, like Alex Jones, that will tell you it's a German death cult and all this when he knows damn well who it is. But of course all his followers don't realise it's the Jews either, because he's basically not telling them. And so it's this small fraction of us that don't have that mark in our brain, because we know the truth and we've woken up, and they don't want any more people to wake up, which is why they keep shutting different people down. But one thing I'd like to throw in here is at this time, folks, I think something you've got to be exceptionally careful of is signing up to any groups and things. Now, recently I've heard people say, join Gab and follow this person or follow that person, what have you. What worries me about that is that you're identifying yourself as to who you are by association, in the same way as if you join a website where you have to have a username and a password or what have you, then you could be on another list there. I mean, I have a Facebook and a Twitter account myself, and I always say to people, if you don't have that, then don't join it. But now I would even say, be very careful, maybe use a pseudonym or what have you, because this is what they used to do. You've been in this long enough, Jim, longer than me. I remember listening to you before I'd put pen to paper and did anything with Joe, the Rizoli brothers. It was always great. But people like the Hal Turner, where he was starting to say things, if you want my archives, you're going to need to provide your name and address, and a notary public's going to need to sign it. Why do you need all that information? Well, because then it identifies who you are. And what do we find out? That he was working as a federal agent. So they want to close the people down, but they also want to find out who the people are that are listening and following these people, because it's not quite as obviously they've got these systems in place with all their monitoring of our internet and what have you, but there's millions of people in America, there's millions of people in the UK and all throughout white countries, and so it's a lot more difficult than you would think for them to actually get data on people that may listen to information like you and I put out. They'll know you and I, but now they want to find out who the followers are. That's my opinion. So I think people need to be very careful.
Yeah, no, you know what I'm noticing? Do you have a cell phone, a smartphone?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, okay, so I do too. In fact, I just got a new one. But it's unbelievable how intrusive that phone is on your life, how it knows everything about you and what you're doing. It's just like this Skype right now we're talking on, and because I'm on a different computer I'm using today for my Skype, and it's asking me these questions. Like I was trying to get Skype on my phone, and it's saying, will you allow Skype to record your calls? Will you allow Skype to do this? It's like, holy moly. I mean, every one of these, all these apps and all these things that you're getting to make your life easier are all there just taking information from you. But the good side of it, and here's how I look at it. See, I'm not hiding from anybody. I don't care what they know because I'm happy to tell them. All right. And you made a point, which is kind of good. It's the other people, the ones that are working, the ones that have to put food on the table for the families. When they collect that information on them, it's almost like they have an edge over them now, to come after them at some point, down the road if they do. You see what I'm saying?
I agree. Well, we just need to see how the media were actually encouraging. The mainstream media were putting out articles encouraging people to view the Charlottesville footage just of the white demonstrators now, the nationalist demonstrators, the people that wanted to preserve their heritage via the Confederate monuments. And any faces that they saw amongst that crowd, they were instructed to out them, preferably to their employer or their university, to get them fired from their job. So this is the mainstream Jewish-owned media doing that. They weren't asking the people to identify all troublemakers. So they weren't asking the people to look at any of the so-called Antifa people that were being violent and throwing urine and feces at the legitimate protests that had the permit. Notice that, and that's very interesting. So they're all in this bandwagon together. They see us as a small group. They want to crush us so they can do what they've always wanted, and that's kill off the white race. And the Jews do it for two reasons. One reason is because they know who they are, and they're doing it for their father Satan. They're killing the children of God, Yahweh God. And the other reason that they do it is because they've been kicked out of countries over 100 times in their history, many several times over. But the only countries they've ever been kicked out of are white countries, Jim. Right. When the communist terrorist Mandela came in South Africa, I mean, go from prison to the president of a country. I mean, how ludicrous is that? But when he came in, he never got rid of the Oppenheimer family, who controlled all the gold and the diamonds, etc. over there. No, he let all these Jews carry on, and all these Jews were prominent in the ANC, like Joe Schlovo and Albie Sachs and people like that. All these Jews in the 1960s marching with Nelson Mandela in the ANC, because they're a divisive force and they always go against white people. White people are their sworn enemy. And in the same way as that we're always told that the Jews and the Muslims don't like each other. Well, how many Jews has ISIS killed? They've even been found to have Jews in their ranks, and they've even issued a statement where they apologised to Israel for something or other in recent weeks. They only kill Christians or other Muslims because they work together with the Jews. Right. And it was the same with the Moors in Spain. It was the Jews that opened the doors to let them in, and overrun the place. because they don't like the whites and anything that they can do. And we see that today. They're just sending all these non-whites over to white countries because they've got something up their sleeve for this year, Jim. I have no doubt about that. Yeah. And they want this this savage population that they're bringing in that are used to living in a harsh terrain to be able to cope better than the dumbed down whites who basically couldn't boil an egg. You know, if they don't get a ready meal now or they don't go to McDonald's, they can't feed themselves because their education has been taken from them, robbed from them, and they've just been taught all this diversity nonsense. So that when these Jews pull the plug, that's probably what all the cameras are for, so they can go running underground and they can watch the purge happening live on the streets of the countries that they're in and say, oh, look, we've got them killing that white person there, that white person there, that white person there. And that's where we're heading. We've got all this nonsense about white privilege. Is milk racist because it's white? Some professor even came out recently about the eclipse and said it only went across predominantly white states, so is the eclipse racist? I mean, it just gets, it's utter lunacy. And the next stage is going to be, we're going to have to kill white people because they're inherently racist. Yeah. It just goes on and on. So I think that really we're in such perilous times. I know in America, of course, you have your guns. I'd love to see white Americans just rise up overnight and just take care of business.
Well, maybe they will. I mean, again, what worries me about the whites with their guns is I hope they understand what we're talking about in how bad things really are. You know, I hope they are. But we'll just have to see. But you made a comment that I have to say I agree 100%, because people will talk to me and say, oh, you have to buy gold, you have to have guns in your house, and you gotta have all this stuff to protect yourself from this and that. And I'm saying to myself, look, here's the deal. This is all, as a Christian now, we have to look at it as what is God's plan. I mean, he has a plan here, and we can't stop it. And divine intervention, like you said, to me, and I honestly feel this way. I mean, that's the only thing that's going to save us, is God's end of it. I mean, a gun is not going to save you. Gold, you can't eat. Money, the Bible says in Ezekiel, they're going to be throwing their gold and silver into the streets. So we really have to have some faith here. To say that God's plan is going forward here, and we better go along with it, because if we don't go along with it, we're going to be in big trouble. I mean, that's how I look at it, and I'm sure it seems to me you agree with the same thing, right?
I do, Jim, and it's not. You see, some people will say, "Oh, you're a cop-out, you're a coward. You expect God to do it all for you." Well, no, that's not the case. Otherwise, I wouldn't do what I'm doing, and you wouldn't do what you're doing. But I sometimes thought, well, why am I doing what I'm doing if it's all going to rely on that in the end anyway? And I think, well, because your job and my job, Jim, is to wake people up. And what the Jews have been doing over the decades is that they've been trying to make white people so unpleasant that God won't want to return for them, because they're not going to be his people anymore. Right. And you look at all the promotion of all the race mixing and the homosexuality and all the things forbidden by God. And this is, just a general degeneration of our people. Yeah. And it's one of their plans. Well, if we can do that, then he won't return, and we'll be safe because we've just destroyed all his people. Right. But we know that it's just going to be a remnant in the end. And I point to things like Revelation. It's so important to raise that passage, because, as I say, in the end times, the Israelites people are basically going to be awash with foreigners in their countries. Well, Nigeria, I don't know of anywhere in Africa that's awash with foreigners. If Mugabe's just turned around and said that he won't prosecute anyone who kills a white farmer. We know that there's only 4%, I think, of whites now left in the South African population. The rest are black. You name me any South American countries, or China or Japan, anywhere on the planet where you've got an influx of whites going in. You haven't. Right. But in all white countries, you've got an influx of non-whites going in, pouring in. And so that proves scripture. It proves who the white race are. And then when we look at the groups behind it, it's one Jew group after another. And these same Jew groups will say, oh, but we don't have immigration into Israel. Israel's a Jewish state. But if anyone argues for a white state, oh, you're racist. You know, the whole thing is just madness. And unfortunately, our children have become so brainwashed by it in the public school system that they're seeing the white elders that stand up as evil and racist when actually they're the good guys trying to protect the race from Satan's children on this planet.
Right. You know what I noticed here in this country? It seems like the Jews are pitting the blacks against the whites. And there was something I read in the paper, internet paper, that the blacks want to get reparations for slavery. Can you imagine? I mean, this is incredible. And I'm thinking, notice how the blacks are now, they're like Jews in regards to getting their reparations for World War II. You know what I'm saying? So I just find this unbelievable how this is all playing out, that all these people want things, and the whites are the bad guys, ultimately the bad guys, right? I mean, that's what I see.
I agree with you, and of course, when what you just said then, the first thing that came to my mind was the Mossad motto, by way of deception thou shalt do war. And that's what the Jews do. They bring these other races into countries, then they create the strife amongst them and let them go to war with each other, or they get other countries to go to war with each other, like the Jew Winston Churchill did in the Second World War by instigating that with Germany over their occupation of Poland, but he had no problem when Russia occupied even more of Poland at the end of the war. But yeah, and also I would say, and some people might consider this controversial, but what the blacks need to look at is the book The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews by the Nation of Islam. And I did a show on that with Dr. Matthew Raphael Johnson, and it proves unequivocally that it was the Jews that were the slave traders. So if they want reparations, they need to go to the Jews. But the other thing about blacks that is quite worrying is that millions of them, you will find today, do have Jewish DNA. And I'll explain that point. As we know, the slave owners going back to the 1600s and beyond were these Jews. And what did they used to do? They used to have sex with some of the black women that they liked and producing children. Well, how many descendants from that Jewish bloodline do you think there has been since then?
Right.
How many millions have we got?
Sure.
And so when you say that these people seem to be very greedy, just like Jews, well, it could be because they are.
Well, that's interesting. But of course, we have to kind of define that they have the satanic DNA in them. Right? Wouldn't you say?
Well, it says in Scripture that even to their 10th generation, they're not allowed into the congregation. And if you take a first generation and you've got a white producing a child with a Jew, and then every subsequent generation, that half white, half Jew, up to 10 generations, only produces a child with a white person, then to the 10th generation you've got 1/1016th or 1032 or something DNA that would be Jewish.
Wow.
But that's still regarded as enough not to let you in the kingdom, according to Scripture.
Wow, interesting. So I mean I don't know about you, but I mean I could have Jewish DNA in me, right? Technically.
Well, I think technically you could always say, well, if I can't go back more than 3, 4, 5 generations, how do I know that I haven't got it? Well, I say because Yahweh wrote the law on our hearts and the hearts of his true people. And so in the Bible, it says faith without works is dead, but also works without faith is dead. And to my mind, I think the people that have got this message and are suffering as a result and really working hard to spread it to others. I wouldn't suggest anybody get a DNA test, folks, because I'm pretty sure that they will say that you've got part Jew in everybody now. Right. And the reason that they would say that is because if anyone suddenly says, oh, the Jews, this, you'd be like, well, I've got some of that in me, so I better not say anything. And this is just another tactic that they would use. But, yeah, I think you make a good point. But, again, I think now you have to go to faith and you think, well, is it likely that I would come to all the realizations I've come to, and I would be so passionate about what I do to get it out to people? Is it likely that I'm part Jewish? And I think the answer is a resounding no.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting point to look into. Of course, the DNA people that do all this stuff up, most of them are Jews anyway. So who knows how things go with them, and making things fake and false readings, and I don't trust any of the medical business today on how they operate, especially knowing that most of the medical profession is controlled by Jews anyway, and what a sad state of affairs that is, when you think about it.
Yes, exactly. And one thing that it brings to mind is, and it's only in the updated version of the Synagogue of Satan, the one that's just been banned completely. There's a thing called the Hutschnecker Report, and that's Hutschnecker, and it was done in the early 70s. And this guy was a psychiatrist, and he basically said in this report that was published in a scientific journal that Jews what's the exact word? Jews are naturally schizophrenic, and they pass that schizophrenia on to others that associate with them. And this was a proper study in the 1970s. So I'd suggest the listeners look that up online, and probably you'll have to look in a few places because Google will be feverishly censoring it wherever they can.
That's not in this book here. The version I looked it up. What is it called? Hutschnecker.
It's not in the old version that you've got, but I'll just I can find it in the new version because I've just looking it up. The trouble is, it's got a 30-page index, and the I'm sorry that we've deviated off the book a bit in this.
The thing with your book, and again, anybody listening to this, if they really want to understand everything that's going on with the Jews and how they're involved with every aspect of our lives, you do a wonderful job here. I love this book. It's so easy to find things, and then you have in the back, you got all your references. You can look up things quick too. So you can't get any better than that in a book that explains it all and gives you the references where to look. It's a type of book, it should be studied like in a class, it's just gone over in college or something, but that's never going to happen.
Well, it's funny because the reason that I put it together, my mother once said to me, if you knew that you were writing a book, you wouldn't have started it because you would have thought it too daunting a task. But all I did was I used to listen to show after show after show. And Jim, that we've had over 100 deathbed confessions so far saying, I killed Kennedy. Yeah. Well, obviously there weren't 100 shooters on that day, so a lot of people are either mentally ill or they're just saying it to, muddy the waters or what have you. So what I did was, when I was listening to all these shows, like your own, I would make notes, and then I would come to my own conclusions after I'd done my research. And so when I write about Kennedy in this book, I'll do a couple of pages on the story. I'll do a few pages on 9/11, and people have written whole books on these subjects. And for me, I get the most important information out, and then I move on to the next subject. That's why the index is 30 pages. The book is 400 pages. So there are so many references in there. And at the end of it, people can come away and say, you know what, I want to find out more about this subject or that subject and what have you. And so it's like a compendium of facts about the Jews that they would prefer that you did not know. And that's what's made the book so good. And it's also because I just wanted to get to a stage that, right, I'm satisfied about who killed Kennedy and why now. And so I don't have to keep listening to shows about Kennedy and wasting my time hearing people say it was people I've already disproved had done it, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
I just wanted to sort it out in my own mind and then not have to keep listening to shows on the same subject. Yeah. And so once I'd done that, I put it down. I thought, well, how do I record this? I thought, well, the best way to record it is record it by year and date. And so that's how it became this timeline, and it just got bigger and bigger. And I sent it over to Darryl Bradford Smith at the time. He put it up on his website and then encouraged me to keep updating it, and that's what I did. As I listened to more shows, got more information, learned more stories about the Jews, etc., and then it just became a book. And that was when it became the 60,000 word book. And then I continued as I listened to things, because I found it quite amusing. A lot of my book focuses on the financial shenanigans of the Jews. And then 2 years after it originally came out with my version of 500 copies, one of which I sent to Tex Mars, and he subsequently printed the edition that you have, which has done about 8 printings now. That's the only edition still available now. And then in 2012, since sort of 2006 when I put it together, I continued keeping notes, listening to things. And in 2012, I brought out the updated version because it had all the stuff that I'd learned since then. And it wasn't tagged on to the end. It was updated throughout because I learned things like the Jewish involvement in Las Vegas going back to the 1940s, and how they were the principal benefactors of the property and businesses seized from the Japanese Nisei. The Japanese who were locked in concentration camps in America during the Second World War that nobody likes to talk about because, of course, it's only the evil Germans that had concentration camps. You know what I'm talking about there.
Yeah,
Jim?
yeah. Well, Andrew, we've come up to an hour. I mean, I could actually talk to you for hours, because there's so much in that book that, each paragraph you could talk about, just on one date, you could say, oh, well, here's what happened here, and go on and on and on. But, I'm going to keep it to the time here. But I just want to encourage the people out there, if they can get your book. Now, Andrew, what's the deal with getting your book now? How can people get your book if they can, or what's the situation now? What can we say about the book, The Synagogue of Satan? What can we do with that?
The only place that you can get the updated version now is from my website, and that's andrewcarringtonhitchcock.com, andrewcarringtonhitchcock.com. And when you open up the site, on the menu bar at the top, there's a button that says Sign Books, and the 2 books at the top, the Synagogue of Satan Updated, Expanded and Uncensored, and In the Name of Yahweh, they are no longer available from anywhere apart from signed copies that I have in stock, and only have a few. So that's where people would go to get those. Obviously, I will look at my options in the future to getting someone else to publish it, but I don't know if I'll be able to, if anyone will publish it. I know I can't think of a self-publisher that will, because the only other one I'm aware of is CreateSpace, and that's Amazon owned, so they won't do it because they've already banned it. So, as I say, that's the only place, unless you find bookshops that have got some in stock, but it's not a book that bookshops will stock because they don't like the nature of its content. So I think it's pretty much gone now. So,
well, what about, can I ask you this? Do you have this book as a PDF?
I don't, but what I do have is, if they go to my website, as I say, andrewcarringtonhitchcock.com, on the menu bar again, there is a button that says books. And when you hover your mouse across that, then a drop-down list appears, and you've got the Synagogue of Satan. You click that, and in that link, you've got the MP3 files of the full audio book. That's me reading the book. It took about 16 hours. And so you could listen to the whole book for free.
Oh, wow. That's great. I mean, that's download. Okay.
Yeah, they're all MP3 files, so very easy to download and stick them on the device of your choosing. And then you scroll down further, and the Darryl Bradford Smith interviews that he did with me on the book several years ago, and this was on the Tex Mars version of the book. So,
well, that's great. I mean, having an audio is very important because people today like to listen to when they drive in their cars and stuff like that. My brother listens to all the books that way. So, but I mean, if you can get that in a PDF, especially now that's shutting you down, I mean, that might be something to think about somewhere. Then you can put on your website and say download PDF. Because I read a lot of books with PDFs now. I mean, that's just the way it is. I use my computer and I read them on that, But that's something to think about. But I'm definitely gonna get the audio of that and check that out. I mean, I think people really should look into that. Well, listen, I think we probably should wrap it up here. But Andrew, I appreciate what you've done. I mean, that, like I said, your book is probably at the heart of all the books out there. This is the heart, because you have to get people to see what really is behind everything else. I mean, all these people write all their books about 9/11, about this, about JFK, and like you say, I mean, but they're not getting to what really is behind everything. And I think your book really does it. And I think it's great. I mean, it's a super book. I've been going through it the last couple of days, and I'm learning some things. There's a lot to learn there. So I think it's a great book for people to understand this. Anything you want to finish up with as we conclude here?
No, just to say that I actually recorded the audio version of the book for people that were unable to afford buying the book, because I know how strapped people are these days. But now it's funny that it's turned out to be, the only version out there. So I encourage people to get that. And I want to thank you so much for interviewing me on the show today, Jim. I just want to say hello to your audience, and I'm pleased to be on your network. As I say, you've been doing excellent work over the years, and it's been a pleasure having you interview me on the show.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Andrew. And we'll keep in touch. And like I said, we'll see what we can do with that audio to get that audio to people also. Okay. Okay. Bye now.
Thank you.